Hello, I'm Beth with Crush Course, where we help you navigate the world of wine. Today we're thinking about Thanksgiving, that glorious meal that everyone loves and intrepid wine folk look forward to each year so they can make their wine pairings. While sometimes the less wine confident hope someone else will worry about the wines this year, for heaven's sake. Well, here is my lineup for Thanksgiving 2020, taking you from the first pre-chilled appetizers all the way through to the sit-down meal. Let me take one big item off of your to-do list, or hopefully by sharing my thoughts and strategies, you'll feel more confident and even inspired to find your own creative selections. Wine and food, wine and family, wine and friends, they all naturally go together. So don't get too hung up on wine pairings for Thanksgiving, or any meal for that matter. There are so many flavors and textures in this all-day meal that there isn't one perfect pairing. Instead, there's a world of delicious options. But the long day of eating and drinking and the complexity of multiple textures and seasonal aromas does lend itself to a few helpful tips and wines that will keep every palate happy and that I'll share with you now. Here's my lineup for a full day of wine delight, from appetizers to main appetizers to the sit-down dinner with turkey, gravy, stuffing, and all the sides. So why did I choose these lovelies for Thanksgiving? I have an overall strategy that involves three main considerations. First consideration, we're thinking of the long haul today. Thanksgiving is a full day, at least in my family, of grazing, from appetizers all the way to dessert, with that filling table in the middle of it. So you want to be able to enjoy your wine along the way without overdoing alcohol or heaviness. With this in mind, I offer a variety of options that can take you throughout the day and all clock in well below, or let's say below 14% alcohol. Second, we consider wine style and food style. With Thanksgiving, we kind of throw calorie count out the window, right? The meal can be heavy and full of starches and carbs, often leading with that creaminess. So we want a little lift at the table with lively wines that keep our palates alive and refreshed. So all the wines here have balanced levels of acidity, no flabby wines in the bunch. On the other hand, the meal with all those starches is not heavy on fats. In fact, we know that sometimes the turkey can be, shall I say it, dry. So my tip here is to avoid wines with drying tannins. We want wines that bring a bit more juiciness and fruit to the table. Save your big cab or petite verdot for Christmas roast or Friday steak. We're thinking turkey here. Third consideration, flavors. A complexity of flavors, of beautiful seasonal aromatics shows up on Thanksgiving. Baking spices, green herbs like sage, savory meaty aromas from the gravy, butter and sweetness from those yams, and your Aunt Nadine's marshmallow jello salad. And not to forget the actual dessert spread, of course. The flavors at the main table may be diverse, but they aren't powerful, and this is important. Baking spices and sage are more delicate. So with our wine, we stay away from powerhouses with big flavor that might dominate over the dish and overpower it. We want to notice those seasonal flavors. So I've gathered a number of wines, 6 to be exact. Depending on the number of people in your Thanksgiving bubble this year, you can open them all and enjoy a taste of each. Or these wines are so flexible that each bottle can play a few different roles across the day, pleasing different palates and preferences. So if you've got a group of just 2 or 3, simply pare down and select your favorites among them. Maybe it's just 2 or 3 wines. And in fact, in my mind, when I was thinking of even the appetizer wines, I wasn't only thinking of appetizers. I was thinking, would these wines be delicious with half of the bottle left over, taken over to the table? Or could they be swapped out, and could they be the main wine at the dinner table? So yes, they pair with the main meal as well. So I introduce my Thanksgiving wines for 2020, split into 4 flights with a bonus wine to boot. I've got the palate cleanser, aperitif wine, the appetizer course, the main meal, and I add in a bonus wine as well if you run out, or one that can basically serve any purpose throughout the day. And I might throw in a dessert wine for you at the end. Now, what are the wines? Let's start with Flight 1. Flight 1, we have the palate cleanser and pick me up for the cook. This will get his or her palate refreshed, a little pick me up, and it's the start wine for all of our cold appetizers, thinking cracked crab, raw oysters, caviar, if you will. Or if you're like my family, we've got ruffles with onion dip, or maybe you have pickled vegetables. All of those call for bubbles. You will never go wrong with bubbles. And this year I've selected the Roederer Estate Brut out of Anderson Valley. Roederer, let's see if you can see it there. Roederer Estate is the California outpost of Champagne's Louis Roederer. This wine, just like champagne, is made and fermented in the bottle. So it will be very similar to champagne, but the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grapes are grown right here in California, just north of us here in the beautiful Anderson Valley of Mendocino County. Think crushed apples and pears, floral notes, minerality, and a touch of toast. But it's those fine bubbles, the light mouthfeel, and a crisp snap that perks up the palate, and it's a bargain for this quality at $28. Now let's look at flight number 2. And I've brought you 2 options today with flight number 2, and it is for the main appetizer spread. If you're anything like my family, you have everything from vegetable crudité to walking taco salad, to mozzarella and tomato basil, to Portuguese linguiça on a skewer, and always a spread of artisanal cheeses with fruits and bread. So I brought you 2 options, and this year, both of them are whites, and both are inspired by French blends, yet are appellated here in California. I suggest putting them both out for variety if you can, and I'll tell you the reasoning behind that. My first option is a Rhone-style white blend. It's crisp while also feeling round and full on the palate. It can go with any of the appetizers I named. There's so much flexibility with this beautiful, yummy, refreshing wine. It's Anaba's Turbine White from Sonoma Valley. And hopefully you've got a good look at that. Anaba's Turbine White. It leads with almost equal portions of Viognier and Grenache Blanc and Marsanne, with about 15% Pic Poul Blanc on the back end. Think aromas of spiced pear, honeysuckle, and flavors of stone fruit and honeydew melon. It's medium-bodied with a savory finish, and at the winery, it's about $34. My second option is inspired by blends from another region of France, a different one, from the Alsace. And the Alsace is up in the Alps, in the mountains near Germany. And this is called Edelzwicker. It's a white blend from Navarro Vineyards in Anderson Valley, also Mendocino County. This wine has more aromatics than the Anaba. So what do we mean? We mean it has some floral qualities and a touch of sweetness that will play with all of those fall spices that we think of for Thanksgiving. This extra fruitiness and a little bit of extra sweetness will go wonderfully with the cheese board, and you think of spice nuts, especially the lighter cheeses would be so beautiful with this wine. Again, both of these will go great moved onto the table. So this Edelzwicker, think of it how lovely it would be with fruit salad if you have that at the table, the Jello salad, but I'm particularly thinking of the stuffing and the sweet potatoes. And by the way, Edelzwicker, why is it called Edelzwicker? Edelzwicker, it means noble blend in the Alsace region of France. So it's a blend of 4 noble white grapes from the region. It's a blend of Riesling, Pinot Gris, Gewürztraminer, and a small portion of Muscat Blanc. It's like a floral bouquet, this wine, with stone and even some tropical lychee fruit flavors. And at about $18, it is a real bargain that you shouldn't pass up. This sells out quickly, so if you have trouble finding it locally, look for any white blend that leads with, say, Riesling, or just select a 100% Riesling. I suggest a medium dry version, so that means it has a touch of sweetness in it. A medium dry to possibly medium sweet Riesling is often my go-to choice for Thanksgiving appetizers each year, that or a dry Gewürztraminer. But I made a little, I did a little variety this year. If you've got any left over, please take it to the Thanksgiving table. So now where are we going next? I'm gonna bring them over. Flight 3, the pièce de résistance, what you've been waiting for, the wines for the main meal. The turkey gravy stuffing portion with yams, green beans and onions, cranberry sauce, and maybe some Brussels sprouts. I've selected 2 again, so you can choose between complementing or contrasting your textures and flavors between the wine and the food. What is your pairing preference? This pairing question, to complement or contrast the food and the wine, often provokes big preferences and proponents. Do you like to double down on Thanksgiving flavors, meaning you like to mirror or echo the more creamy textures and savory, buttery, toasty notes in that food with your wine? If so, then you like pairings that complement. If instead you prefer to do more of a yin-yang, take a sip of wine that has a little bit more acid and is more likely to cleanse and refresh your palate between each creamy bite of Thanksgiving dinner, and perhaps add a flavor to the dish rather than only mirroring it, adding a flavor that might perhaps act like a relish or a condiment, then you enjoy contrast pairings. Both complement and contrast are fabulous strategies for pairing, and I give you a wine for each. So my first one is a wine that complements the Thanksgiving dinner plate, and that's the Stallmiller Vineyards Estate Reserve Chardonnay out of Alexander Valley. See if we get a good look at that. They have an estate Chardonnay. This is the Estate Reserve Chardonnay. And it is sustainably farmed. Stallmiller is known for sustainably farmed all estate fruit. In this wine, the Reserve, think apples, buttered toast, and lemon with just enough creaminess in the mouthfeel that it does truly complement those savory turkey, gravy, stuffing flavors. This wine has been fermented entirely in 900-gallon French oak casks with indigenous yeasts. Additional aging on the lees in 1- and 2-year-old Burgundian barriques for a total of 6 months. You will be thrilled with this pairing. It's a balance of richness and elegant. Think Asian pear, hazelnut, vanilla, lemon custard flavors and aromas. It's $48, but you'll be glad you picked it up. It is worth it. Now our second wine, your wine that provides a bit of contrast, and we're going with a red wine here. We're thinking juicy, tart wine, something that might replace, you know how you add cranberries to your dish? Well, if you don't have cranberries handy, or you can keep them there anyway, think about the red wine adding that contrast, adding that splash of extra fruit tartness flavor. While refreshing your mouth, remember we want to add, with a little contrast, we're adding lift to the palate. So this wine will also cleanse your palate with a playful contrast to those deeper flavors on the plate. I selected a red blend this year, and take a good look at it. Hopefully you're seeing it quite well. It is a red blend from Idlewild Wine called Flora and Fauna Red Blend. You may be surprised that this leads with Barbera. I so often go with a Gamay for Thanksgiving or a Pinot Noir. But this year, I've chosen this Piemonte style blend with grapes out of Mendocino County. It's a blend of Barbera and Dolcetto for ripe, juicy fruits with a smaller portion of the King Nebbiolo grape for floral qualities, refreshing acidity, and a little bit of tannic structure. SAM allows whole grape clusters to go through partial carbonic maceration to entice those juicy flavors, then finishes fermentation after a full foot treading, which gives this wine just enough tannic structure and base notes to carry it through. The blend isn't big and heavy. In fact, it's the opposite. It's exuberant and delicious with juicy plum and dark cherry flavors, with violets and dried herb aromas and a silky mouthfeel that will do more than accent your turkey dinner. I dare you not to drink it on its own. So you can skip the actual cranberry sauce this year if you'd like and take sip after sip of this truly gorgeous wine. And for $25, it truly is a steal because it really does taste far above that price point. I encourage you, if you can, to bring both of these wines to the table so your guests can decide if they prefer to complement or contrast. They have a choice. Or better yet, set 2 glasses per person. They don't have to decide. They get the best of both worlds. Okay, so I've mixed up my wines here a little bit. Let's see if we can still see them. And what I want to bring in for you is I always like to have a rover wine, rosé. Smart hosts have a backup wine on hand, what I like to call your bench strength wine. Like a chameleon, a rosé fills any spot in the day that I've discussed. And it goes with everything. Really, it does. And this rosé loves Thanksgiving flavors and is an elegant and elevated, delicious choice for the day. We've got the Grand Moraine Rosé of Pinot Noir out of the breezy Yamhill Carlton AVA in Oregon. So yes, Yamhill Carlton is a sub-AVA of the Willamette Valley. The Pinot Noir flavors do come through on this wine as strawberry, white peaches, and pink grapefruit flavors with a touch of herbs, good juicy acidity, while also having, excuse me, almost a sweet meringue-like creaminess that will be a delight at play with those sweet yams, nutmeg and cinnamon, even those bacon-laced green beans. Yum! Use this rosé at any time on the day. You could even use it as your palate cleanser instead of the bubbly, because if you don't have the bubbly handy, it can become your appetizer wine, and it's pretty magical at the dinner table too. Anywhere you might find a gap in your wines, or if you run out, if you're being big drinkers over the day. Finally, I throw in a little surprise, an optional dessert wine. Why do I say optional? It's only because you might be pretty tired and have a tired palate by that time of the day. But if you're like me and my family, you wait a good 2 hours after dinner before you think about pumpkin lemon meringue or your mom's famous apricot pie. So by that time, you might also be ready for another glass of wine to accompany those slices. And I'm going to sneak it in over here. The wine I've selected for your sweet desserts is a sweet wine, but it's not heavy. It's not super sweet. It's not cloying sweet. It has a light, playful fizz as well. It's Centori Moscato di Pavia. So it's a Moscato grape from Centori. And Moscato di Pavia is a less expensive cousin to the more famous regional wine, Moscato d'Asti, which you may be more familiar with, but Pavia is not very far away. With flavors of ripe, juicy peaches and ginger, floral aromas, and a touch of apricot on the finish, it's light enough and versatile enough that you may truly want to set it in a little bucket right near the dessert and snacks table for whenever you want to pass by and pour yourself a sip when you sneak that oatmeal raisin cookie or your cousin Nicole's Rice Krispie treats anytime during the day, and everyone is happy. Coming in around $12 or less. I found it for $9.99. It won't break the bank. And if you're tired of wine, just sneaking this in here, you could always do something special. When you're done with all of your dessert, go for some Four Roses single barrel bourbon. That is a good digestif. And this has got pear and apricot flavors and caramel notes. Just thought I'd throw that in. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, these are my wine picks for your 2020 Thanksgiving. For more opportunities to navigate the world of wine with me, follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Crush Course Wine. Crush Course Wine. And don't forget to go to my website, crushcoursewine.com, and subscribe today so you can be in the know for more navigations through the wine world and not miss future classes and wine tips. And when you subscribe, we'll also send you 2 items, a Crush Course wine evaluation sheet and tasting mat for your next side-by-side wine tasting. Once again, I'm Mary Beth Vieira at Crush Course, wishing you a beautiful and delicious, happy Thanksgiving.